last week the story for The Last of Us 2 was leaked by either a former employee or a current employee who's about to be fired. I forget which, and I'm not wanting to make a mistake on that part. And Naughty Dog has since, everything they've done since has led me to believe these are real. Between interviews where they have said please don't watch it, to statements where they've said nothing about it being fake, rather that they don't want you to hear about them or read about them or to stay away from them, to I believe his name is Neil Druckmann, the director and VP for Naughty Dog, who's just gone on mad rants about the leaks. Everything that Naughty Dog has done since the leak tells me that it's real. So I am going to be talking from the position of this being absolutely 100% what the story is. And good God, is it bad. It really suffers from two big issues, at least from my perspective, and that's what I want to focus on. I want to focus on these two big issues, and I'll talk about some smaller stuff in them. Now, the first big issue, and this is, to me, the biggest problem, is that it does this trope that some games have done before, that whenever is done is pretty much universally hated. That they're about halfway through the game, they're doing a character switch, which other games have done before, and especially in the action genre, which Last of Us 1 was, so I'm going to run with the assumption that Last of Us 2 is again. It will be hated. Every time it's done in this genre, it always ends terribly. Metal Gear Solid 2 being the big example. Especially when done late in the game, and I'm counting halfway point being late in the game. You have this idea and this expectation that you are playing this character. You have grown to sort of identify with this character. You have grown to understand how this character works. People do not like then just having a sudden upheaval, a completely different playstyle, a completely different character, a completely different story. Hell, Last of Us 1 did that with, at one point, about 2/3 of the way through the game, you play Ellie for a section of the game, rather than Joel. And people hated that part, or I should more accurately say that was the least favorite part of basically everyone. Even when this is relatively well done, people still don't like it. They prefer the character they know rather than having to relearn everything when the new character is introduced. The only genre that I think can actually get away with this is the RPG genre, and that's usually because they have you controlling one of your companions. And that works because you know this character, you played with this character in your party, so having to control them for a little bit, it's not a bad feeling compared to playing a completely new character. The other part of the Switch is they're doing something that is very rarely seen in this. Normally you're switching from one protagonist to another, or from the sidekick of the protagonist. Again, Metal Gear Solid 2. What they're doing here is they're switching to the villain. According to the leak, the villain beats Joel to death, and then right after that, you take. It's either right after that or right after Ellie goes out looking for the person that beat Joel to death, then you switch to the person who beat Joel to death, and you're playing from her perspective, where the game tries to make it seem like she was in the right at this point, and you're playing not as the antagonist, but now they've switched it to her being the protagonist. I can't recall any game where this was really done, or at the very least done and liked. The closest I can think of is either Final Fantasy VII, where you played as Sephiroth, but you had Cloud in your party as well. Uh, and that was a flashback scene, so that's why that worked there. Or in a few David Cage games where you play the character in one chapter and then the next chapter you play the people going after the character. Those are the only situations where I've ever seen this kind of work, and it's never been a complete reversal like this. I think this might be a first, at least for as big a game as this is, and I don't see this ending well. I understand why they did it, though, is the problem, and that's going to lead to the second big issue that I saw from the leaks. They did it because ideological reasons. Because the character that you are switching to is a trans woman. So, from the progressive ideological standpoint, you had to make her the main character because diversity or some such. And this is probably what the overall bigger issue is with the writing. And I think that this is what's going to hurt the game more. From a base logic standpoint, I still hold that switching characters is the biggest issue, but I believe that it actually stems from the ideological problem. It's you're trying effectively the switch comes because you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Now, what's going on with this? People have already seen from the trailer that they made a really big deal about the lesbian kissing thing in at some sort of party for The Last of Us. Apparently, the main villain is a trans woman who is about Ellie's age, so late teens, early 20s. She is the daughter of, and I'm going to keep using the woman pronouns because I'm trying to just keep it in one rather than keep switching back and forth. She's the daughter of one of the people at the laboratory that was trying to kill and use Ellie for a cure. So she is seeking revenge on the main characters, Joel and Ellie. She kills Joel by beating him to death, and I've seen images of her, and she's a fucking MMA fighter. She's effectively this one MMA fighter. I don't remember who it is. I don't remember their name. I don't remember anything about them. That was a trans person that beat the high holy hell out of one of the women MMA fighters. And that Ronda Rousey was supposed to fight but refused to because of that. Because this person, while being a woman and being in the women's MMA category, was born a man, had bigger bone density, muscle density, all that shit, and just beat the living shit out of a natural-born woman MMA fighter to the point where she had to be hospitalized. I believe I'm remembering who was involved in this correctly. I believe that that's why people refer to Ronda Rousey as a transphobe, because she refused to fight this trans MMA fighter for safety reasons. No shit, Sherlock. But this character is built exactly like that MMA fighter, so I'm not surprised that she beat Joel to death. That's not the part that it seems off. What seems off to me, and it's several things, but let's start here. This character is, at the oldest, mid-20s. But I'm under the assumption that she's about Ellie's age, so late teens, early 20s. The apocalypse in the first game happened 15 years ago, because they do about a 15-year time skip. Ellie was born right around the turn of the apocalypse, I believe, if not shortly after. So, and this game takes place 5 years after that. So it's been 20 years since the apocalypse happened in this game's universe. How the fuck is she trans? In a world where basic medicine is scrounged up, in a world where people are barely surviving on anything, where there is no mass production, mass manufacturing, no nothing, where scrounges of civilization exist at best. How the fuck is someone transgender? Hormone pills, I don't think exist anymore. And clinics where they operate and change on you, hell, even basic plastic surgery clinics, I'm pretty sure are all fucking gone. So from a logistical standpoint, it makes no sense that she's trans. And I'm gonna break off for a small tangent here. This is one of the big issues I have with these people that are very ideologically progressive and try to shove it in any way they can because they feel they need to for diversity's sake or representation's sake. They do it in ways that don't make sense to the world. Now, I got no problem if this was normal modern day and this was a trans character. Okay, that's fine. There are trans people that exist. Okay. The issue here is you're putting her in a world where it doesn't make sense that she should be trans, or could be trans, I should say. I remember the Dragon Spear, that fucking terrible beam dog Baldur's Gate expansion that was made. One of the issues in that I talked about a long time ago was that they had a character who said that they were trans. That made no sense in that universe because in D&D they have this belt that changes your gender from male to female or female to male. And that belt, because it's a cursed item, is cheap as dirt. It's less than the price of staying at an inn at the cheapest room. So why they are transgender rather than just using the fucking belt makes no sense in that universe. And then the other problem is even when it does make sense for them to be transgender, it's just done in a terrible, terrible way. Mass Effect Andromeda had that one character that when you were just going around to all the generic NPCs asking why were you here, because a lot of them gave side quests or a lot of them had reasons to ask this. When you asked this one NPC, so what are you doing here? What's your job here? Well, I was born a man and I came here to become a woman. Okay. I didn't ask your pronouns, miss. I just asked what you doing here. It's this thing of they don't seem to know how to handle transgender characters, so they just shove them in terrible ways, or they feel like they have to be a bigger part of the story, so they put them in positions where it doesn't quite work, and then that leads to people not liking them, like this case. The reason that this character is the villain is because I'm absolutely certain Neil Druckmann thought that they needed a one of the main characters to be transgender for representation's sake, and they already had Joel, Ellie, and Ellie's girlfriend, so they kind of couldn't do that. So they put her in the antagonist position, but then making her the villain is a bit of a no-no because, well, she's a trans person, so you gotta make her the good guy. So that explains the character switch halfway through. And again, I don't understand why they do this, because I've seen the reactions from a lot of trans people, and when it was done in Dragonspear, when it's done in Andromeda, and especially when it's done here, they hate it. They realize when tokenism is happening, and they don't like it because it makes them look bad. You trying to shove in random diversity for diversity's sake, and people not liking it looks bad on the trans people who are like, I never wanted this. Why the fuck are you doing this in my name? But especially here, even the woke people, the progressive people, hate this one because she is the villain. And that's a no-no. You committed the sin of not making the diverse character the perfect character. So everyone hates this. You have people like myself who argue this makes no sense logistically, and from a gameplay design perspective, this was a bad idea. You have the woke people who hate it because the trans character is not the perfect little angel. You have the unwoke people that hate it because, well, shoving in a trans character for diversity's sake. No one liked this idea. And this was done purely ideologically. And then to make the ideological idea fit, you did a logistical idea that was just as terrible. This game is going to flop very, very badly because of this. I've already seen thousands upon thousands of people say that they are so glad that this story leaked, because they would have been pissed to play this and find out this was the real story. Because I'm pretty sure that another reason it was done so late was so that you couldn't refund the game. Most games, or most stores, if they have a refund policy, if you played to the halfway point to get to this reveal, you were already stuck with the game. I'm talking about for digital sales. Physical one, you might still be able to get that back, but let's be honest here, especially due to the current situation. Hi, YouTube! You ain't gonna get me this time. Ha ha ha. They're going to buy digitally. It's. I really hope. I really hope that this game does badly so that it can serve as a lesson to not push ideology in these kind of things. Focus on good writing, and then if it fits, you can have these kind of characters. If it fits from a logistical standpoint, if it fits from a narrative standpoint, don't just shove them in and then try to figure out how to make the game work around them. That's the biggest issue here. You shoved in a transgender character and you're trying to make the game work around her, rather than you're making a game and then you're writing natural characters. That's the biggest issue I have whenever one of these ideological things hits. This is by far the biggest example, and if this fails, we will probably see an end to this. At least I'd like to believe that, but most gaming companies are based out of California, so ha 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 ha. I can't wait for the game to be. And as a last little point, I think the gotcha that Naughty Dog is going to use is, I'm fairly certain that the ending that we were told, that the main antagonist, who you play as, ends up killing Ellie and her girlfriend and all of her friends, and then people start coming after her. I think that the gotcha that Naughty Dog is going to use is that was probably one of multiple endings. And I'm thinking that may be the bad ending. And people are going to get these different endings because there are probably going to be 3, 4 different endings. And they're going to be like, aha, see, the leaks were fake. Every other reaction they've had leads me to believe that this is absolutely one of the endings, but I'm sure that it's a multiple ending kind of thing, which Last of Us 1 didn't do, so that's not expected in Last of Us 2, which, again, is probably to do with the ideology being shoved in, so you have to make the game accommodate that. I want to be wrong on all of this. I really do. The Last of Us was a good game. I want The Last of Us 2 to be a good game. It looks like it's going to be absolute shit, and Naughty Dog's every reaction since has all but confirmed this. So if it is this bad, I hope it just tanks. I don't want Naughty Dog as a studio to die because they still make good product. I want Neil Druckmann out because he's fucking lost his gourd. But otherwise, I just want them to go back to making good games and stop the ideological push. I want this game to fail more so that other games, other companies stop this bullshit. I know I'm asking too much, but god damn it, I would like some semblance of sanity in the video game industry once again. Boy, am I barking up the wrong tree. There's been Math Machine saying, I'm gonna get so much, well, you're just a transphobe hate because people are basically tribalisming once again around this. Because Twitter. Fuck, I hate Twitter. Peace out.